Right now, international news outlets are tracking a massive emergency in the Middle East. A United Arab Emirates nuclear power plant has been directly struck by a drone, starting a fire at one of the facility's main generators. Almost immediately, the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, activated their emergency response protocols to monitor the site for potential radiation leaks. The initial reaction is to look at the local geography. People assumed the human and economic toll of a meltdown would be contained entirely within the UAE, threatening global hubs like Dubai or Abu Dhabi. But the mechanics of a nuclear disaster do not respect national borders. The most severe, long-term threat actually bypasses the UAE entirely, slowly traveling thousands of miles away to the east. The explosion itself is devastating, but a localized blast is highly contained. The true danger is the airborne radioactive fallout, an invisible cloud that is completely at the mercy of the weather. This map shows high-altitude wind currents from the Persian Gulf acting as an atmospheric conveyor belt. If radiation releases, these winds push it eastward across Afghanistan and Pakistan. Reaching India, the currents split, flowing directly into New Delhi and steadily across the southern peninsula. When those radioactive particles finally settle, they contaminate the soil and water systems. This leads to toxic acid rain, which would severely cripple India's agricultural output and leave millions exposed to long-term health risks. What begins as a localized military strike between Middle Eastern powers quickly mutates into a direct biological and environmental crisis for the entire Indian population. To understand why a nuclear plant is suddenly in the crosshairs, we have to look at the exact timing of this strike. This is a specific, calculated maneuver in an escalating shadow war. Just hours before the drone hit the UAE, Donald Trump published a highly cryptic message on social media, describing the current geopolitical climate as the calm before the storm. The post featured a massive U.S. aircraft carrier alongside escort ships, overlaid with Iranian flags, a direct signal that the United States Navy was preparing to target Iranian assets. Both sides are locked in a severe retaliation loop. Iran's domestic nuclear infrastructure had already been targeted in previous strikes, making the UAE plant an obvious target for a retaliatory Iranian drone strike. Hitting a nuclear reactor is a highly deliberate trigger point. It is designed to force a response in a military cycle that is rapidly spiraling out of control. This diagram shows the core of the diplomatic deadlock. To stop the violence, both the United States and Iran have laid out their strict terms for a ceasefire, and the demands are entirely at odds. The United States is demanding zero financial compensation for any damages inflicted on Iran. Furthermore, they insist Iran be restricted to a single nuclear facility and completely surrender 400 kilograms of their enriched uranium. Iran's counterdemands reject every single point. They require full financial compensation for their destroyed infrastructure, alongside the total removal of all sanctions, so they can resume selling oil to major buyers like India and Japan. But their heaviest demand is the immediate unfreezing of all national assets and strict recognition of Iranian sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, a crucial shipping lane the U.S. relies on. The negotiating positions have drifted so far apart that bridging the gap is virtually impossible. This rigid deadlock practically guarantees further military escalation instead of a peaceful resolution. As the threat mounts, there is a total vacuum of international mediation. Countries like India, despite facing severe secondary risks, lack the direct leverage required to force either side to the negotiating table. The conflict is further complicated by Israel, which maintains its own distinct military objectives within the broader regional war. Any lasting peace agreement would have to satisfy their independent security concerns as well. Meanwhile, in the United States, domestic politics block any path to compromise. Making sweeping concessions to Iran and handing over billions of dollars would be political suicide for an administration facing upcoming midterm elections. With diplomacy paralyzed, active nuclear power plants have crossed the line from protected civilian infrastructure to standard, legitimate military targets, drastically raising the human stakes. The period of restraint has officially ended. By failing to secure an agreement, global powers are now actively risking an airborne radioactive catastrophe, one that the wind will carry directly into the heart of the Indian subcontinent.